The far distant reaches of Shun were long since abandoned by civilization. And you know what they say, nature abhors a vacuum. That vacuum was thus filled with large, blood-sucking spiders. Nature, why are you like this? Yes, our heroic guild were forced to battle the locals of a Second Empire outpost, but the prize was worth it. The iconic mushroom-shaped buildings were in terrible condition, and hence less mushroom-shaped and more pile of blown-up rubble-shaped. Structures like these didn't collapse on their own, and nor did the Second Empire. Artifacts and written documents were hidden in every corner of these ruins, and thus the better part of the day was spent there collecting them up. It was a simple team effort. Izumi did all the work, while everyone else kept their hands, feet, and will to delete away from the precious treasures at all times. They were experimenting with something here, Izumi concluded from her findings. It's all talking about feeding and reproduction rates. Experimenting, huh? Nuke nodded. Of animals. They were raising creatures to try and get them into the wild. Can't really tell what. Just says things like test subject W345. Whatever it is, it didn't stick around, I imagine, Elena said.
Yep, no evidence left, I heard. No abominations or whatever. Scientists like them wouldn't have accidentally called anything with 4 legs a damn spider, so we know there's nothing there,
Rick reasoned. Nuke, can you do your thing? Izumi asked. Nuke went over to the one building that was still in pristine condition, with its hydraulic door firmly locked. There's something written here, he reported. Says, speak, friend, and enter.
Fucking nerds,
Rick called in the distance. Must be a riddle or something, Izumi said. Nah. Friend, enter. What? I said friend, and enter. Is that not it? No, it's probably some secret word. Secret word. Oh, I get it. Nuke pulled Izumi closer to the door and put an arm around her. Izumi wasn't sure Nuke had actually got anything, but wasn't complaining so far. Then he said, Hey door, look, this is my Tomodaiki, who is a girl. You mean your Kanajo? Oh yeah. The door was opening there and then. Second Empire was a weird time. Oh, by the way, Kanajo really does mean friend who is a girl. Although a more apt translation might take the first and last words aside, reverse them and just go with that. It sounds like Izumi had been having a cheeky read of the guild's custom-translated ancient literature. Given that she was now entering a quiet library with Nuke-kun, those tales must have been foremost in her mind. That would explain why she seemed so nervous as she rifled through the drawers, shelves and boxes, bagging random books and folders without looking at them. Phew, Izzy, why don't you come up and take a look at this? Nuke called from upstairs. Izzy was experiencing a very bad case of Doki Doki now. If you don't know what that is, then what can I say? You haven't read the classics, have you? Enough of this, it was all business really. Nuke had found a big map of the area from the pre-abandonment days. It seemed to indicate that the headquarters for the creature creation program was on a plateau to the northwest. This will be the perfect place to find what we want, Nuke said, saying it of a spot on the map, of course. Yeah, it's so isolated. There won't be anyone there to stop us getting to the truth, will there? Izumi said. Still speaking of the archaeological stuff, although she was edging awfully close to her senpai. So, Izzy, my friend, I wanted to... Nuke muttered. Yeah, sorry about what happened last night. Wait, what happened? I was asleep the whole time. Oh, me too. I meant before that. I was being weird. No, it was fine. I don't mean to be a tsundere, you know. What? You know what that is? I've been reading. You're not a tsundere. You're... I don't know. Just you. Just... Izzy. Nuke. Call me that again. Anything you want. Izzy. Oh, fucking hell, Izumi said, before doing something very untoward. What? I don't know, do I? This all happened in private. Can't we just let them have their little night in the library? And it was all night, by the way, with the rest of the guild camping out in the ruins around it, daring not approach that temptingly still open door. Only Rick's microphones were sensitive enough to detect the truth. Nuke stumbled out of that door amid the first hints of dawn and started frantically clapping his hands. "Alright, rise and shine, my lovely people, it's time to make history even better," he declared.
"Happy evening, Prince," Isaiah asked.
"History's just really good," Nuke said, quickly marching off. Izumi shambled out of the library shortly, greasy as ever. Gustafsson took one sniff at her, then turned away defiantly. "Unworthy association! Foul!" he said.
"Huh, you're jealous,"
Els said of him. Let's hope it was just an idle-minded remark and not a true assessment, because if it was true, then this is just getting far too complicated. The guild went off towards that hot spot on the map. On the way, they came across an old storehouse, upon which Nuke's magic was worked and entry was gained. Perhaps wanting to prove something, Gustafsson went in first for once, followed by his gang of run-in soldiers. Inside, they got the first taste of why the tech hunters had given up on this part of the world. The building was guarded by a squad of Second Empire security spiders. These were similar to the iron spiders the guild had bested in the wild, only they were smaller, faster, and downright angrier. All of the hivers were out cold by the end of it, and one was missing a leg. Several Shek were groaning on the floor, and even poor Watson was out for the count. It was quite the brawl, and this was just some rusty old cliffside outpost. If it was that heavily defended, what might those Second Empire weebs have left guarding their giant headquarters, up to which the guild hobbled that evening? It was Ninja Nuke's job to check. The building was a large citadel, in the same fashion as the one used by the Bugmaster up on the mountain, but in far better condition. In fact, it was in perfect condition, despite the centuries out in the desert. Nuke soon spotted the caretakers to blame inside. The whole facility was packed with two things: pristine ancient machines and relics worth more than their weight in mank, and crazed swarming security spiders, aka the legendary less giant robot crabs. One of them clocked Nuke peeking in through the windows and chased him all the way down the long exterior ramp back into the desert. It didn't stop them, clattering into the guild with its spiky appendages flailing with motorized force. It gave everyone quite a beating before it finally whirred to a halt. When you're fighting something made of metal with a sword, there just isn't a huge amount you can do, especially with the low ground clearance on the things. Nuke's secret critical twist technique wasn't viable.
"What's the prospect?"
Isaiah asked. "It's packed full of the good stuff, and shitting crawling with the bad stuff," Nuke breathlessly reported. "Clearly this is a piece of history we aren't meant to see. Shall we carry on elsewhere?" Wadston suggested. Nuke shook his head. "Man, this is it. This is everything we need. One last big job. Not that I've ever... wait. Izzy, you explain. Wait, not that she... because of the history. Shit, we're staying alright. We'll figure something out." Thus the great siege of Shun began. That night, Nuke went up for another peek inside. The other spiders on the first floor weren't as watchful as the earlier one, and so he managed to actually get inside. The pristine tools and machines were his to touch, and those webless spiders were none the wiser. He crept up the ramp to the second floor, where even more valuable and exciting machines sat, humming away even after 1,000 years or more of standby. But there was a security spider at the top of the ramp that Nuke had to get past to spy any more secrets. It was facing the other way, but as Nuke tried to step around it, a crumb of chocolatey starch fell from his messy stubble. It landed right in front of the spider, which buzzed to life and immediately pinched the crumb into its mouth. "Calorific content exceeds recommendation. Suggested approach to reconciliation. Execution without trial for all humans," the spider's dusty speaker reasoned. Oh dear. Nuke tried to leg it, but tripped on the spider's leg and whacked himself out cold on the floor. Still, the spiders had booted up for blood, and so a few went looking for targets outside. The guild camp was there for the taking, but after a hard fight, the spiders were held down and stripped of their vital parts. It was the dead of night, and with half the guild now moaning of cuts and bruises, it was almost possible to miss the fact that Nuke hadn't come back. But after all the situation Azumi had endured, she wasn't going to forget him that easily.
"Nuke, are you okay?"
she shouted up at the towering lab. In that instant, Nuke woke up on the cold steel.
"Nuke, please come back. Say something,"
the shouting went on. Nuke scrambled over to a window, ignoring the spiders around him, and called back, "Don't worry, Kanajo, I'm good." "Danger. Otaku language detected. Engage combat protocols," a voice said from speakers throughout the lab. Oh dear. Nuke barreled down the ramp and sprinted back outside, chased by another cluster of angry arachnomorphs. "They called me an otaku," Nuke complained, but there was no time for semantic analysis. The spiders crashed through the barely standing guild, and this time it was very much touch and go. The spiders' whirling bludgeons touched your arm, and off it goes. Ruka of the 1,000 Guardians watched her sword fly off in her former right hand, but immediately pulled a dagger with her left and bashed at the nearest spider casing. Eventually, each spider bot was torn a few new ports, and the fighting was over again. "Please stop going in there, my prince, this is too much," Watson said, struggling to raise his head off the ground. Nuke, one of the few still standing by the end of it, agreed. The next day of the Great Siege was spent with everyone lain up under a few tall trees nearby, covered all over in gauze and splints. All the while, Nuke was sat in the dirt looking up at the tower. "My man, was this what those old sieges were like?" he asked Wadston. "Not quite. You couldn't set up a field infirmary like this in the desert. Skimmers wouldn't have it." "Oh yeah, the skimmers. Remember when we used to get beaten up by those guys?" "Yes, my prince, quite well." "Makes you think about how far we've come." "I don't follow, my prince." "Now we're being beaten up by robot spiders. That's way cooler." "Ah, from that perspective perhaps life has improved," Wadston conceded. "But would it not be better to remain relatively healthy and intact?" "Ah, my man, you are old but not wise. If we do not have monsters to fight, then we must grapple with the monsters inside our souls." "Ah, you mean self-doubt, for example?" "I mean that I'm not a damned otaku! That stupid building thinks it knows me!" Nuke burst out. "And what is an otaku exactly?" "You still haven't read the classics. It's like someone who never gets a beach episode, but must always dream of it." "Is that bad?" "It's the fucking worst. It's as bad as calling me a loser."
Wait, the building called you a loser?
Isaiah said.
That's nonsense!
"I know," Nuke shouted. "That's it. I'm sure we've killed them all now. I'm taking another look." That was on the morning of the third day, which for reasons entirely unrelated was the third time Nuke came running out of the lab with cantankerous clankers in tow. Another fight, and still no one had managed to die, but everyone was certainly thinking about it after all these terrible beatings. Some of the hivers were comatose, hardly anyone could walk, and the stashes of painkillers and bandages had been run dry. Only a hero could rescue this ailing army from peril, and a hero they had.
Well, watching you fleshies get it handed to you's been great, but I'm gonna help you out here,
Rick said. "Rick, don't tell me you can control those things," Izumi asked.
Control? Oh, I get it. Just 'cause I'm a robot, I must be friends with all other robots. Damn, you gotta get out more, sister. Sure, I accessed their... Wait, look, I'm not going there. It's just rude, man. Just straight up rude. Ain't touching your firewall, ain't touching theirs. You hear me?
Technically, I can hear you, but it's not really helping.
I'm saying I'll hook you up with some beds for your bruises and shit. I don't know, back in a flash.
Rick thudded off into the dawn and ran with superhuman speed back to Drifter's Last. There, he purchased a load of camping gear and returned it to the siege. With camp beds, fresh medical supplies, and the finest homemade booze the Empire's back alleys had to offer, the next couple of nights under the stars passed much less painfully. In fact, most were back on their feet now, and laying about was getting boring. "Right, shall I do it again?" Nuke asked.
"Oh, go on then,"
Isaiah said, waving his guardians into formation. Nuke popped up to the tower and stood proudly in the main doors. "Hello everyone, I am well versed in Japanan literature," he said. The spiders scanned him curiously, but didn't move. "No? I mean, I really like those pictures." Still nothing. Nuke huffed and pulled a light novel from his bag. It opened with well-worn ease onto a particular page spread featuring a hilarious incident of semi-accidental groping. "This is Mikuru-chan, and while we don't live in the same dimension, I believe we share a strong romantic bond, but I'm not an otaku," Nuke declared. That did it. "Critical degeneration detected. Eliminating parasite vector," the voice said. Nuke had some more spiders to show his three-dimensional friends, and an epic battle with the power of teamwork and so on was had. With this, all the spiders on the first floor of the lab were out of action. Next, Nuke went up to the second level, where a couple more awaited. "Hey backers, check this out," he said, running across the room with a stooped posture and his arms outstretched behind him. For reasons known only to cultured literati and the killer robots that hunt them, this threw the spiders into a rage. They came out to face the guild as well then, and by now the crew were getting the hang of pinning the deadly appendages down while someone found the off switch. There was only one spider left in the lab, and after it too wandered out to its demise, the siege of Shun was over. "Victory!" Nuke shouted.
Fucking hell, everyone alive?
Izumi asked. Apparently so. With that confirmed, she suddenly felt more nervous than she had felt during the fighting, and about half as nervous as she had been when Nuke... never mind that. Now was time to collect the spoils of war. The upper level of the lab had a number of storerooms, and as Nuke and Izumi hacked open old containers, they found reams of printouts, masterfully built machine parts, and things even rarer.
Holy shit, Nuke, it's an uninstalled core!
Izumi shouted, pulling a lumpy blue sphere out of a box. "Nice. We could roll it at Coinslot's Tin Men and see how many we get each time," Nuke suggested. But as Izumi explained, these AI cores were more likely to turn the Tin Men into fully fledged living beings than knock them over.
"These are what the Second Empire used to make their soldiers. It's got remnants of the First Empire tech that built the skeletons. These are... We have to study this, Nuke. This could change everything."
"In what way?"
"It can decode the oldest data. All this data, all these pages. If we get this to Enrico, we're done. I'll be the best tech hunter of all time."
"And the drugs?"
"Nuke, if you can get me and this core to the scribes in one piece, I'll get them to draft a green machine plan from those notes you found. No problem now that we've got this. Kind of a waste of the greatest scientific discovery in 2,000 bloody years, but hey, gotta test it out on something."
"Fuck.
"Izzy, we're literally the best team." "It's all you, Prince, I assure you."
And it's all for you is, I assure you."
"Thanks. I've got a good feeling about this."
Speaking of good feelings, before we go back out...
"Nuke, the core.
What?"
It's literally watching."
"What?"
"Fug, how'd you know?"
the core said, sounding suspiciously like Rick.
"Disconnect, Rick."
10 stacks.
20, now fuck off."
Izumi grabbed a sheet and threw it over the core, then grabbed another and threw it over Nuke. With precious pages of ancient books littered all over the floor, Izumi seemed more interested in the present than history. And to be fair, that particular present was quite a lot more interesting.
"Who connected me to this? What is that sound?"
The AI core said in Enrico's voice, but Nuke and Izumi, being closer to the source of that sound, didn't clock the intrusion. So, the week-long struggle for control of the lab had left the guild loaded up with ancient treasures and knowledge worth far more. Now their return to civilization might just bring about, well, a return to civilization, more broadly speaking. But that is pie-in-the-sky thinking. Even if these discoveries would only lead to a revolution in drug production, that was more than enough.